If you can go back in time and rebuild your orthodontic practice from scratch, or if you're just starting up, what would your practice look like? Well, today's guest built from the ground up, making custom digital technology his foundation with a special emphasis on remote monitoring. The goal, of course, efficiency, but also to keep patient care front and center. Stay tuned to learn more. Our Golden Age of Orthodontics podcast sponsors make it possible for us to bring you new episodes. Cale Owen is revolutionizing orthodontics by turning the chaos of conventional braces into custom control. Their custom digital solution helps you achieve consistent results while saving on average over 7 appointments per patient. It's custom done right, so you can focus on delivering amazing smiles. Find out how Cale Owen can modernize your practice. Book a demo today and get $250 off when you mention People in Practice to your representative. Created by an orthodontist, Grin is redefining remote monitoring with a cost-effective solution that boosts practice efficiency while delivering personalized care for each patient. Grin provides you with dedicated assistance, enabling you to focus on providing exceptional care, all while saving valuable time for you and your patients. New customers can save up to 35% on their starter package. Transform your practice. Better care begins with Grin. To find out more about our podcast sponsors, visit pplpractice.com/partners.
The future of orthodontics is evolving and changing every day. But although the way to achieve practice growth has changed, there's never been a better time to be an orthodontist. Let's get into the minds of industry leaders, forward-thinking orthodontists, and technology insiders to learn how they see the future of the orthodontic specialty. How will digital orthodontics, artificial intelligence, clear aligner therapy, remote monitoring, in-house printing, and other innovations change the way you practice? Join your hosts, Dr. Klempner and Amy Epstein, each month as they bring you insights, tips, and guest interviews focused on helping you capitalize on the opportunities for practice growth. And now, welcome to the Golden Age of Orthodontics with the co-founders of People in Practice, Dr. Klempner and Amy Epstein.
Welcome to the Golden Age of Orthodontics. If you are a podcast subscriber, first of all, thank you. And you probably already know who I am. But if you're not, hit the subscribe button and don't miss any of our podcasts. This is episode, I believe, 69. This is our 6th year in doing this. So for those of you that are new, welcome. And I am Klempner. I am a retired, proud board-certified orthodontist. I'm currently teaching. I'm the director of orthodontics at Mount Sinai Hospital here in New York City. I'm also part-time faculty in the orthodontic department at Harvard, and I am the CEO of People in Practice. In addition to that, I am a wannabe blues guitarist. I just bought a new guitar. I'm waiting for it.
Oh,
for
really?
those
That's
guitarists
new.
out there. Yeah, for those guitarists out there, it's a Strandberg, which is like half a guitar. It's really odd shape, but it's easy to play while you're sitting down, but it wasn't half price. I'm also the father of 3 daughters and grandfather of 4 grandchildren and 1 granddog. And I'm joined today by one of my daughters and my partner, Amy Epstein. How you doing, Amy?
Doing well. Interesting to learn about your new instrument purchase. That's looking forward to hearing that. I'm Amy Epstein. I have an MBA in marketing, background in public relations, working for brands large and small. And I got involved in what I do now, which is manage People in Practice, which is an orthodontic marketing consultancy. Because when I finished my MBA, my dad said to me, you know what we've been doing for my practice? Well, there are lots of people asking me if we might be able to help with their practices. And I think there's something here. And it turns out there was something there. So we started People in Practice, and now we have clients across the States and in Canada, and we have growth consultants that work with those clients, those orthodontists, across the country as well. So today, that leads me to today and this podcast. And a lot of what we do is to help our clients to promote to their community the benefits of working with their practice over everyone else in the community who offers orthodontic treatment. And a lot of that is about figuring out what is my competitive differentiation if I am the orthodontist. What makes me different and what makes me relevant and what makes me someone that my community would want to come to see. And then we promote that because that's really at the core of what brings in new patients, is being able to articulate that and find people who value that. And then it's a perfect match. Today, we have someone on the show who knows that about himself and his practice. We're thrilled to have Dr. Adam Reynolds join us. His practice is called Orthodontic Design Co, and he's located in Madison, Alabama. And he built his practice from scratch in 2022 with a really forward-thinking approach, which is embracing custom digital braces, aligner therapy, and remote monitoring right from the get-go. And it allows him to operate with the efficiencies that everyone's looking for, but at the same time, preserving his autonomy and a real focus on patient-centered care, which is a big part of his differentiation in his community. And today he's here to talk to us about why Grin became a core part of this model and how it's shaping his practice and what orthodontists that may be looking at remote monitoring systems can learn from his journey. So we're thrilled to have you here today, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here. I don't do as many things as Leon, but I just do orthodontics and my own 5 kids. So I'm glad to be here.
You have 5 children. Okay. Well, they're unto itself. That's a big feat.
Yeah, it's because you have to have a really good wife. You have to have a really good wife to make that happen.
Well, you win on that, Adam. So, first of all, thanks again for joining us. So Adam, when I sold my practice to my partners, I moved into Manhattan, and I said to Amy, I said, looking back, if I were to start up now, I would have a completely different model of practicing. I would be in a smaller footprint. I'd be taking advantage of all this new digital technology that became available after I had already retired. But I talk about it, but you actually did it. So tell our listeners, how did you decide which technologies would be central to your practice?
It's a really good question. Kind of like Amy mentioned a little bit, a lot of it starts with vision. And I think a lot of it starts with understanding what makes you tick, what gets you excited, right? Because technology may not be the thing for every person, but it's something I really, really enjoy. And so because it's something that I wanted to be, then that forced my vision to then focus what kind of practice I wanted to run. And we kind of talked about it a little bit. One is I have 5 kids. So I know what life looks like for many people. And so as I sat down, there's 2 pieces that kind of came to the forefront. One was I like to be able to plan my setups from the beginning and know what I'm getting into as far as teeth and planning and how it's going to turn out, and take away as many of the variables out of the equation as I can. And aligners allows me to do that, but braces is a whole different ballgame. And I had, in my history, practiced with SureSmile as an associate for several years, and then I practiced without any digital, and I saw the difference for me. And so that was a real easy, okay, after seeing that difference, I know I want to go that direction. So KLO1 for me was a no-brainer. The cost made sense. The software is incredible. And so that was one piece. And then the other piece is, okay, if I can basically provide superb communication and customer care and eliminate appointments, and it's not because it's just a win for me, but for patients too, right? Like for me, as someone who has 5 kids, to get someone out of school or to leave work or to things like that, it's just challenging. And then we know that orthodontics is a journey. And so we know that patients want to feel like that they have access to us when even minor things to us might come up, but they could be big things to them. So remote monitoring was something I had experienced before I started my practice. And I would say I'm even more so sold on it now after a couple of years than I was going into it. So when you kind of put all those together, my goal was, like you said, to, create a smaller footprint practice with higher touch, more customization to create the experience that I want to have, I guess is what it comes down ultimately.
So Adam, obviously you have options when choosing a remote monitoring system, right? So tell me why you chose Grin, and maybe more specifically, what pain point did it address, or what feature made it stand out from other remote monitoring solutions?
Yeah, I've used other companies before, and so I've got some experience with different kind of apps and situations. And I took a chance on Grin initially just because of the price point. That's what got me interested, is because as a new startup, cash flow is critical. And as you're going in, and I wanted to jump in all in with this technology. I didn't want to say, I'm only going to use these patients and not these patients, because then you create inefficiencies and you can't leverage a system fully. And so that was the initial kind of tipping point, is the price point was so much less, right? Especially as I think and plan and grow. The surprising things were I found a lot of benefits that I didn't expect. And the main benefit was, even as a startup and even now as I'm much bigger, I use the Grin HR Premium, which comes with a Grin employee, and she's Renee. And she reviews every single scan and every single communication that comes in and responds to all of them. And she's a person. She's not AI. She has AI tools on her side, but the quality of care that we're giving with someone who's a human that monitors that for us from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week, has been a game changer for us. And something we didn't necessarily fully appreciate until we jumped in that way. And so now when you look at kind of what our patients most appreciate about our practice, custom braces is really important for what I want to do, but I don't think they understand that fully. But they do understand I've got Dr. Reynolds and Renee that I can communicate with 7 days a week with any question, and we're responsive, right? It's not all on Renee, but it is certainly that team approach. And the hardest part of managing a practice right now is managing people and that kind of a situation and whatnot. And so if I can outsource that to a company who's training them, and then if she goes on vacation, they have someone else to step in, that takes it off my plate too. So it's been just nothing bad to say about it. It's been incredible.
So, I talk to a lot of orthos, and, Amy and I talk about moving towards a more digital practice in the future, and that this is the direction the whole world is going in, and orthodontists need to move in that direction at whatever level that the orthodontist feels comfortable with. So we've been promoting the use of customized appliances and remote monitoring for a long time. But the pushback I get from orthos is that, I don't want to disrupt my whole system. You know what it's like to make a change in your workflow, and the staff and the scheduling, and, that's the pushback that I get. So I'm curious for you. You mentioned before that, you're a startup. So did you decide that you were going to put everybody on remote monitoring, or do you have a way of what's your decision-making process in terms of how you implement Grin?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I guess even in a bigger perspective, I feel like when doctors are saying that they're the ones of the problem, right? Because we're the ones who are supposed to create the vision. And so it's on me to say, this is where our vision is, and I'm all in, right? And then your team comes all in. So a lot of times it's us that are afraid to make changes. And I've experienced that even switching remote monitoring companies when I was, a few months in or several months in. It's like, I've already done this and I'm going to lose the cost. Well, one of our core values that we've set down as a practice is to be fearless and to be adaptable. And so that is part of that equation. Now, as far as how we choose to do this, what I've learned in my career over a couple different practices is that unless I go all in on something, I don't fully get my staff to go all in and then leverage what I'm doing. And so even just in the simple version of things, one of our goals is to be patient facing when our patients are here. Well, if we can train our patients to use Grin for all their communication, now we're getting less phone calls, right? And so now we're taking that out of the equation as much as we can. We're still going to get people that call, right? But part of it is training our patients and our team to think differently. And if we're only doing that in certain situations, we never get over the hump of doing something completely different. So for us, when you start to create, we do it here, but not here, it creates inefficiencies for us and makes us less effective, I guess.
Let's flip the conversation a little bit and talk about the patient experience, which was really how your vision for this practice was around how you wanted to be treated as the father of 5, a professional, somebody who works full time, a lot on your plate. How do you communicate the value of what your practice offers? How do you get across everything I just said to prospective new patients who maybe come to you for a consult, or maybe even before that in marketing or whatever? How do you get all that across? Custom technology, because like you said, the value of a custom digital bracket, like that may not be as clear to them as it is for you. The value of Grin to the patient seems to be communicated in through Renee. Once they're patients, you learn about the value, but how do you attract consults because of everything you have to offer?
That's a really good question. You're in the marketing field, so you probably have an idea of your own answer, but it is a coordinated effect, right? And so how should I communicate this? One is in the marketing sense, as we're thinking about marketing, we try to choose one thing at a time. So for the last year, the only thing that we are marketing is Grin. So if we're talking to dentists in the community, we're doing that. Or I'm making videos on social media, or we're talking about it in every touch point we can, because it takes a while for that message to get across. It may take a year or 2, right, for that to become part of who you are. The other part of things as patients come in is try to then now think about them, and it's communicating in subtle ways consistently across that. So it goes from how we named our practice, right? Orthodontic Design Company. It's about being custom. When patients walk through our door, there's an 85-inch TV screen with a software where it might be an aquarium where kids come in and they color on a sheet of paper an animal, and it scans in and it brings it to life up on there. So it's a custom experience, right? And then when they come in, we take a scan of their teeth and we do a simulation on a TV screen here in our consult room and show them a before and after. And so it's the subtle ways you're communicating from before they walk in to the consult. And we're not sitting here and saying, oh, look at this great app. This is all the benefits. Sure, we bring it up, but even then patients can't really wrap their mind around it, right? What that means until they're in the process. So you're trying to make that same message communicated across all the touch points. Does that make sense in ways that they
Totally.
can understand?
Yeah. And I think what you're doing is you're embodying the concept of the medium being the message, meaning you are taking on board and delivering in everything you do what your core differentiation is. And that is the first tenet of good branding, right?
Yeah,
like a brand is nothing.
It's your vision.
Yeah. And if you say you're going to do something and this is what you are claiming that you offer, you have to be that and do that in everything you do in order for that to permeate and actually be authentic.
Yeah. And then it's the next step too, right? So we make our bonding appointments long enough that we're going to take a scan at that first appointment because we're telling them this is important to us, right? And then my first reach out, when instead of doing a care call, is I'm going to message them on the app and say, hey, how are things going? So it's training your team and your patients. This is important to us and we're all in, right? If that makes sense. So
for those orthos out there that are seeing their numbers flat or not growing, what Adam's just communicated is golden rule number 1 in marketing, which is to differentiate your practice. And find out what is your North Star and make sure that is the message that goes out on your website, on all your communication. This is so critical. And when we work with a client in our People in Practice agency, that is where we start. And Amy is an expert in doing that. So Adam, I would be remiss if I didn't bring money into this conversation because, as orthodontists, we're seeing that technology is expensive and there's big concerns about it. So let's talk some numbers, if you don't mind. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're willing, if you could share with us, how has implementing Grin impacted your practice's financial efficiency? If you can give us some ROI numbers or overall business growth, anything that would be helpful so that we can understand this.
Yeah, I'll try to do my best if that makes sense. When I think about Grin, I kind of parse it into two parts, right? One for me is the technology, and one for me is a full-time employee that is pre-trained. And so if I sat down and did the numbers right now for my practice, and I kind of take that cost and divide it in half, the Renee part, which is the employee, we're paying her 60 cents an hour or less right now to monitor all of that for us, right? And so for me, that's a great deal. Technology is not that expensive if you kind of put that all together. Now, as I sit down and I think I've shared this on different podcasts, but I use a CFO Ortho as my CPA. And so as we're going through this process, I sat down and said, okay, here's your numbers that you say, your percentages of what a practice should be. I said, I'm a fully digital practice that's a startup. Do you have someone you compare me to? And they're like, I don't really know. So I said, okay, I want you to take my staffing percentages and move them down to here, and then take my lab bill and move it up the same amount here, right? Because that's where my vision is. And then the next month I said to them, have you had anybody else that's ever asked you that? And they said, no. And I said, my mind is blown, because why is everybody just taking whatever any CPA says, this is how your practice should run, and not dictating that yourself as to what your vision is? So there certainly is some of that, if that makes sense. In a traditional sense of, as a startup, in a situation where the market is not just going gangbusters, we've hit our goals for the first year. We doubled the second year, and we're continuing to grow now in our third year. So for us, that has financially made sense. The way we think about it is that we want to have our team be smaller, but rock stars, and have be very patient facing. And so that's part of that equation. And then in our fees, we probably reflect that, where we might increase our fees a little bit, not necessarily to offset every single cost of our technology, because there is efficiencies in there as well that we hope to explore. And we are, right? We probably average 17 patients a day in the clinic right now. We run 1 to 1.5 chairs, but we're a pretty busy practice as far as gross, because we can, and we do it different ways. So there's certainly, it makes sense for us. There's no question at this point of us going backward on that. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, it is. And I think, as we look back on the conversation, and we have listeners who are either in practice and maybe looking at adopting a remote care model, or are looking at starting up and incorporating remote care into their vision, what do you think maybe is a key learning, or some advice that you might want to share ahead of taking that step?
I think one of the challenges with something like remote monitoring, which Dr. Leon kind of touched on, is, especially in practices that have been doing this for a while and have their system set up, it's really hard to make a change. And so what happens is you say, okay, I'm hearing that this technology is a good idea. Well, I'm going to go invest in it, but it really takes constant kind of evaluating how you do your systems and then working together. So any technology is not a turn on and it's going to work. So we certainly spend time as a team talking about how we can implement it. And what I will tell you is, Renee, who is our employee that works for Grin, has said multiple times, as I call her every now and then, we just say, okay, Renee, how are we doing communicating with you so you can better help us? Or how can we better help you? Or what are you seeing on your end? And we're having discussions so that we can make Grin work for us better, right? They're only as good as the information that we give them and the help that we give them. And as our team, if we're not doing our part to put in, okay, notes for her or our treatment plan so she can see those things, then she's minimally effective, if that makes sense. So we're constantly kind of working with Grin to say, okay, what can we do better for you to serve us? And these companies are hungry for that information. because a lot of practices don't. And the other part that we get feedback from her is, you guys are the only ones that use all the tools that we have, right? So most people are not really leveraging the things that are in there. So if I'm doing virtual appointments, I get on Grin and I record a 1-minute video going over their scan, send it to them. We're going to make an appointment, or we use it for all kinds of different things, if that makes sense. And we put our treatment plans in there and use Renee to let them kind of monitor bite or IPR or trays or give us notifications. And so it's really utilizing what you have in front of you instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to buy this technology and then it's not working. It takes effort to make sure you're getting the value out of it.
I imagine that incorporating at the start, at the get-go, as early as you can is probably advantageous before there are lots of habits formed and rigidity and all, that reluctance to make change that happens with all of us, really, when we feel like something is working, delivering, whatever, just disrupting that apple cart.
No, it's true. And I mean, like this podcast is called The Golden Age of Orthodontics, which I would have thought 10 years ago was the 80s. You put up a sign, your patients are going to flock to you. But in some ways right now, as a startup, this is the golden age of orthodontics because you can design a practice now and outsource some things and use technology to create a practice that is a completely different direction than the ones that are out there. And so I don't think there's a better time to start
our language. That's exactly, that's the point. And that's exactly how we feel. That's why the podcast is named the way it is exactly for that reason.
And patients appreciate it. And patients appreciate it. They really do.
And that's the point, is that, you could offer anything you want that makes you different. Everybody could, whatever it is, and you name it. But if it's not valued by the patient, if it's not important to them and something they prioritize and make decisions based on, then you might as well not do it, because it's got to be important to them. And that, I think, is, just going back to where we started, is that vision for patient care will serve you well, because that's what patients are valuing now too. And you're giving them that attention and time back.
Yeah. And I guess this is a good kind of point, because this is in my mind, right? This is what patients want. And as I knew I was coming on this podcast, I actually sent a message out to all the patients on Grin and said, hey, I'm going on a podcast to talk about some digital things, remote monitoring. What is your feedback, positive or negative, right? Because in my mind, it's a good thing, but what do patients really think? And if you don't mind, I'd like to share a couple of quotes of just some of the things that patients wrote.
Yeah, do it. That sounds great. Yeah.
Let's see. This one says, I can say that having to go through 2 sons who had braces and making those routine in-person appointments, the amount of pain or discomfort and overall experience with them, my experience is nothing like theirs. This one says, my son had an emergency with his expanders late on a Saturday. I was able to communicate his urgent need via Grin right away. We had a response and a plan of a care almost immediately, right? Which is awesome. This one says, my aligner journey was so much simpler than I thought was possible. I enjoyed having feedback. Renee is great at responding, keeping up with my journey. It saved me trips to the office, and it had been calming to know that you guys are a text away if needed. And it just goes on and on, right? So it's fantastic.
And they're telling you, these are the things I value. Thank you for giving them to me. So you're getting that feedback that it's a connect. It's what they need and what you offer.
Which makes me feel good too, because you never really know, right? Until you ask. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey and the technologies that you have in place and your experience. I imagine that we may have some questions from listeners as they hear this podcast or watch this podcast. Is there a way that they can reach you if they have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One is, because I do find myself being unique as a startup doing this, because there's a lot of fear going all in digital. I did start a YouTube channel just to kind of document some of the things I'm doing and some things I'm learning. And it's called All In Orthodontic Practice, or All In Orthodontics. It's new, so maybe I'm saying it wrong now, but it's on YouTube. And then if people do have questions, probably they could find me on Facebook, which would be an easy way, or to email me at areynolds@orthodesignco.com would be the easiest way.
That's great. Great. Well, thanks again. We appreciate your time so much. It's been really good talking to you, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Adam.
You can subscribe or download other episodes of The Golden Age of Orthodontics on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed this episode, which I'm sure you will, we'd appreciate you telling a colleague. For more information about people and practice, you can visit our website at pplpractice.com. And lastly, we are both speaking at the AAO in Philadelphia this year, Leon and me. If you'll be there and want to meet up, let us know. You can email us at Amy or Leon at pplpractice.com.
Thanks for watching and listening. As Amy mentioned, we'll be in Philly. So if you're interested, shoot me an email, or you could text me directly on our People in Practice website, pplpractice.com. For those growing number of pedo ortho practices, or if you provide some phase 2 types of treatment, there's a brand new Facebook page started by Dr. Dan Grobe of Orthotown fame, where you can find both clinical and marketing tips. It's called the Pediatric Orthodontist. So check it out. Both our podcast sponsors, KLON and Grin, have been gracious enough to offer our listeners a special promotion. Go to our partner page on our website, pplpractice.com/partners. And as Adam says, and Leon says, remember, for forward-thinking orthos, it has never, ever been a better time to be an orthodontist. We are in the golden age. Take advantage of it. So, bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden Age of Orthodontics. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or visit our website at thegoldenageoforthodontics.com for direct links to both the audio and video versions of this episode.